Hi, welcome back to Cubs in Culture for January 26, 2018. Um, Continuing our review or analysis of Get Out. Okay, so I'm going to spoil the plot of the film. So spoilers. It concerns a black guy named Chris who is dating a white woman named Rose, and they go back to go back to their Rose's family's place for like an extended meeting the family weekend. And well, it turns out that her family, that this is all a setup because her family has perfected a form of a brain transplant where basically what it is white people are partially transferring their consciousness into black bodies to live longer, or for the cool factor, or it doesn't really matter. It's just it's sort of it's a metaphor for how white people have been denying agency and stealing the bodies of black men for 400 years at this point. And so that's sort of the main plot. And then at the end, Chris escapes and by basically killing the entire family. Yeah, pretty standard horror plotting. So, of course, the film that's most broadly similar to is The Stepford Wives. And again, not the god-awful abomination with Nicole Kidman, but the one from the 1970s. And it's on that way that is one of the reasons why I really like this film, is it's incredibly creepy. And the thing is, people throughout the entire film, it has a very slow burn where a lot of times it feels like that on one hand, like this is one part of being a social commentary, is on the one hand, it feels like it's just white people being like being racist with microaggressions, but on the other hand, it's like, no, there's something seriously wrong here. In any case, let me just quickly talk about the two aspects of the writing that I like the most in terms of it just being a film. Is Chris okay? So most horror films, regardless of genre or social comedy or anything like that, horror characters are usually some of the dumbest fuckers to ever grace the cinema screen. And one of the things I really like about this, and it's both for Chris, who's the main character, and then more so for Rod, is Chris is not a dumb, he's not a dumb horror character. He behaves completely logically, and he's it's a slow escalation. And it's nicely structured where people are behaving oddly, but it's not so like that you would necessarily want to get away. And at some point in a horror movie, you always end up saying, why the fuck did you do that? And that doesn't really happen with Chris. Maybe he could have ran out the door instead of asking Rose for the keys or something like that. It's very, very minor because the way in which the plotting needed to move forward. So the fact that he's an intelligent, logical character is really refreshing within the context of the horror genre. And then, of course, Rod takes us a step further because Rod's basically in the movie. Rod is Chris's friend, and he's watching his dog, so he keeps having phone conversations with him. And Rod is basically sort of like a standard horror audience member in the film, and he's telling Chris to get the fuck out of there. You can't trust these people. He predicts what's actually happening, etc. So, like, in terms of its like writing, it's really solid. I like that Chris is given a little bit of depth because he has to deal with his sort of guilt about not calling 911 for his mother, and he kind of has his inner Damon Slade when he goes back for Georgina, who turns out to be the white grandmother. So like that, in terms of the scripts, I really, really like that. Directorially, it's really nice as well, in that it feels, again, it has a nice sort of creepy 70s cult horror film vibe to it. It feels very much like Rosemary's Baby and The Omen to me. Where you have sort of classic reveals and everything like that. And it has sort of this nice, just general creepy factor to it. And was probably the best example of this is they're kidnapping black men for their bodies. So there's an auction for Chris's body. And it's portrayed, and it kind of comes across of like what's going on until you see the camera pull back and it reveals Chris on a poster, and you're like, oh fuck, it's an auction. And Peele, being a comedian, has a very good sense of timing. So in horror films, there's a lot of these things, and it's something of a cliche though. Peele keeps it to an absolute minimum. Jump scares, okay? Jump scares work because they're a matter of timing, and there's several good ones where they're not forced. It's not like a damn cat's hiding in a closet. It's actually connected to the plot. Like one of them is Georgina looking at him because it's the way in which the writing is. It's only a partial transfer of consciousness, so the black person whose body's being used still exists in some sense, and so there's always sort of this internal conflict. And so Georgina seems to be watching him because it feels like Georgina, the woman who's been subjugated, is trying to break through. So like the jump scares are sort of justified in that way. And so in any case, Peele, being a comedian, he has a pretty good innate sense of of timing, and so most of these things actually work for once. Excuse me. And on that way, it's sort of a very solidly directed film. The dialogue is crisp and funny, and again, Rod steals the show. I'm going to pause for a moment. And then, again, I don't know quite how to say his name, but the acting on the whole is fantastic. But Daniel, I don't know how to say his last name because I've never heard it said. The guy who plays Chris, there's the scene in which the character is being hypnotized and sort of bringing up his mother's guilt. His guilt over not calling 911 for his mother's death. It's actually sort of an amazing bit of an actor doing storytelling with just body language and the emotion on his face. So I'm actually like, I've given the sort of commentary around Get Out. I'm not really all that surprised that it picked up a best picture or best original screenplay nominations. I'm gratified that it did pick up a best director and a best actor. Yeah, right, and it's just like the other thing is I don't know if I come this across. It's just a fun. It's a fun, scary, creepy movie, which you can look at it in sort of this social commentary, but at the end, it's sort of amazing because at the end of the movie, there's this great cathartic moment of a black guy shooting a white woman, because Peele is like the way in which the writing and how much the film is structured and everything. It's just totally great, like catharsis, and I think we sort of needed that as like a country. And this is I want to set this up because it's something I want to talk about in the next section about like timing. Originally in this film, Chris ends up in jail because at the end cops come and see him strangling Rose to death. And then he gets arrested because obviously the system, this would have been the point of the Obama era, is that the system is still racist. And so, of course, as a gut punch, the main character ends up being a martyr to shut down this horrible thing in which black bodies are being stolen. Now, in the actual movie, this is shifted to Rod showing up and saving him. And while Rose still dies, Chris doesn't strangle her. And it feels much more like, instead of it being like Chris comes, instead of being a martyr, he ends up being a hero. And Peele made this decision because of Trump being in the White House, and I think that's just sort of sociologically interesting. So that's what we'll be talking about in the next section. Okay, let me pause there.